fits with the narrative, as Harry put it, Rome's burning and they're nicking the silver on the way out. It fits with the narrative that Labour have built, that the Conservatives have been in it for themselves, whether it's PPE
Mm.
contracts during COVID times, or the way that they've run the NHS, and they haven't necessarily been in it for the British people. And at the very last opportunity, they're trying to make a quick buck for themselves. So I don't think it's going to go away during this campaign.
Well, here to bring us up to speed on the campaign is Times Radio's Theo Usherwood. Theo, good morning.
Very good morning to you.
We are getting familiar, aren't we, with kind of the patter from both of Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak on how they get through these awkward questions. What were sort of the tricky moments for both of them yesterday?
Well, I think for Keir Starmer, there was 20 minutes of questioning about his support for Jeremy Corbyn when he was, of course, shadow Brexit secretary, and Mr. Corbyn's cabinet front bench that was in place between 2015 going through to 2019. And it was interesting because Keir Starmer, rather than appearing shifty like he had last time, actually tried to develop the argument that he needed to stay in that front bench position, key front bench position, by the way, for what he described as the day after, because he told Harry Cole and the Sun readers that he realised that there would be a day when Corbyn had left and that he wanted to stick around. He wanted to ensure, as he put it, that Labour didn't shift its position on NATO. He wanted to ensure that there was resistance against what had been seen as prevalent anti-Semitism within the party under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. And he was trying to explain to some readers who are worried about his position with Mr. Corbyn why they shouldn't necessarily be sceptical that he'd stuck around to try and shape the Labour Party and make the changes that he's made since. I think for Rishi Sunak, the key was about Liz Truss. He came in, and Harry made this point at the very start of his opening with Mr. Sunak. He said, you promised integrity, you promised accountability, and look at what you've presided over with betting. But he also, of course, made the point, didn't he, about his support for Liz Truss serving with Boris Johnson. And Rishi Sunak was saying, actually, he tried to make a virtue of the fact that he'd stood against Liz Truss in that campaign of 2 years, 2 years ago now, somewhere 2 years ago now, that he'd warned about Liz Truss. He was right then. Of course, Liz Truss only lasted 49 days in government, and that because he was right about Liz Truss and the calamity that the British people would suffer under a Truss premiership, people should trust him, he said, when it came to his warnings with Keir Starmer.
One challenge that the Prime Minister has, which Keir Starmer has largely avoided, really, is dealing with scandal that's happened over the campaign trail, and these betting investigations and allegations that, we're sort of day 5 now. The Conservatives just can't get away from those questions.
No, they can't get away from it. And there's a front page story out this morning, which is pointing the finger at the Metropolitan Police for leaking the names of those involved in the betting scandal from the Conservative side. Of course, there's a police officer who's already a close protection officer who looks after Mr. Sunak, who's already under investigation as well. And the finger seems to be pointing from the Conservatives, at least, that it's the Metropolitan Police and not the Gambling Commission that has leaked the names of these Conservative candidates and officials who are caught up in the betting scandal. Of course, this story refuses to go away. Mr. Sunak is insisting that the Conservatives have launched their own inquiry into what's happening to run alongside the Gambling Commission's inquiry. But the first thing to say is that these are very serious accusations that have been made, and potentially, you could see criminal involvement further down the line as well. We don't yet know the full extent of it, so it continues to run. And it fits, finally, I'd say, it fits with the narrative, as Harry put it, Rome's burning and they're nicking the silver on the way out. It fits with the narrative that Labour have built, that the Conservatives have been in it for themselves, whether it's PPE contracts during COVID times, or the way that they've run the NHS, and they haven't necessarily been in it for the British people. And at the very last opportunity, they're trying to make a quick buck for themselves. So I don't think it's going to go away during this campaign. 1 in 6 voters apparently, this is the top story that they're aware of. So it is cutting through with right across the board. And there are already accusations from the likes of Tobias Ellwood and an insinuation from Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, who is, of course, outgoing, not standing in this election at the weekend, that actually is going to have an impact on votes. But could that be another move from the MPs, at least, or the outgoing MPs in the case of Mr. Gove, to try and shift the blame away from, for any defeat, away from the parliamentarians and onto officials?
Yeah, yeah. It's so interesting about what cuts through to the public, doesn't it? There's kind of the rain at the beginning
Yeah.
of the campaign for the Conservatives. Of course, D-Day, what happened there, and now the gambling. There seems to be more errors on the Conservative side over the last few weeks than there has been from the Labour Party. In terms of the debate yesterday, Theo, the audience were asked sort of put their hands up and say who they thought had won, and there was quite an even split. From your perspective, who do you think came away sort of on the higher platform?
I think the audience even split is fair enough. I don't think either Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer won it, and I don't think either man made a significant mistake in that debate. I think the first thing I'd say is that Sun readers, White Van Man, the key constituencies that they will represent, or they will be particularly, they'll have a strong demographic in, are key in this election. So it was no surprise to see both Mr. Sunak and Keir Starmer bring their A game to this debate, and I think actually both of them did. I don't think, you sometimes watch these debates, and of course both candidates prepare, and both men prepare and put the effort in. But I think last night, given how key it was, given how key this battle is for Sun readers in particular, and that particular demographic within the electorate, I think both men put on quite a feisty performance.
Yeah.
Neither man was trying to shy away from bringing the lines. I mean, of course, you played that clip there, on immigration from Rishi Sunak. There's been some split in this campaign, whether, you've seen quite a punchy social media campaign, which has been often criticised from the Conservatives, of people rolling out the red carpet on the beaches to welcome, the accusation from Labour that they'd roll out the red carpet on the beaches to welcome migrants. Rishi Sunak actually went there, didn't he? And he got a headline in a few of the papers today by saying that, the migrants are there on the north coast of France, just waiting for Keir
Waiting for the
Starmer
Labour
to be
Party, yeah.
elected so that they can make that crossing, which I think is is probably inaccurate, but it does feed into that narrative that his social media team, at least, are trying to run, that Keir Starmer will only make the problem worse. Keir Starmer, equally well prepared, I thought, by the way, on this question, and kept on referring back to this 44% figure of applications that haven't been processed, and how he wants to get to grips with that by putting more officials in. And he also made a huge play, didn't he, on his previous experience as a lawyer working in public service when it comes to dealing with terrorism, and how you need that same approach, counter-terrorism approach, when it comes to dealing with the gangs that traffic people across the channel. And he's going to, there's nothing particularly new in the fact that he wants to create a border command, where the boats are going to be, which is going to try and manage the crossings or stop the crossings. But what he did keep on saying repeatedly, and making this point, that actually he wants to elevate that up so it works at a counter-terrorism level and having counter-terrorism powers, rather than sitting just in the Home Office. And he hopes that when with those powers, it'll be much easier to work across borders in Europe, potentially, of course, North Africa as well, to stop the crossings happening. And I think there's a frustration in Labour and a frustration from Keir Starmer, and you heard it a bit last night, that it's him that's taking the rap for the government's failure, and actually he wants to try and push on and say, it needs to be done differently. It needs to be managed differently, in order to stop this from happening, rather than trying to pin the blame of the past 14 years on the Labour Party and the Labour leader.
Yeah, well, exactly. Theo, thank you so much. Times Radio's Theo Usherwood, who was, of course, there yesterday for the debate, live here on Times Radio.